Will, welcome to the podcast. I appreciate you making it. I think you are my first international guest, so that's awesome. And we're excited to have you and have this conversation today.
Thank you so much for having me, Todd. I'm very excited.
Yeah, well, good. Well, Will, maybe you could start a little bit about maybe just your journey, your entrepreneurial journey. I think when I was doing some research on you, I think you're based in Bulgaria, and you've been in the States, you've been in Germany. You have an interesting background from computer science and marketing. But maybe just talk a little bit about your personal journey and some of the stuff you've been doing from an entrepreneur standpoint.
My dream was always to be an entrepreneur since I was 10 years old.
Wow.
I started to sell some stuff in Kazakhstan, actually, when Soviet Union fell down and no one had a clue. And for me, it was intuitive to start selling with my parents. I convinced them. And since then, it was always my plan. And then in Germany, it was, of course, not so easy as in Kazakhstan. You had to be more professional, more bureaucratical. But as soon as I started studying, I started my first business. And it was a wild journey. It was going really up in the beginning. I was creating websites and selling them, and also the ad space on them.
Okay.
And it was like every year it was doubling the revenue, but then Google changed the algorithm and it was not working anymore. And then I found a partner and we created a software to do it more professionally. And we had the same situation. We had the right timing. And we had so many requests. We had over 1,000 users and 40,000 websites on our platform. Okay. But then we were overrun by another competitor. And it was between 2010 and 2015. And since 2015, I'm focusing more on marketing side. I'm as an agency. And with all this experience, looking back, I realized what went wrong. And now with my podcast, with my agency, I'm trying to help others in the same situation like I was back then.
That's good. That's pretty exciting. Well, good. I appreciate that. So where do you want to go? Do you want to talk a little bit about kind of what you provide? Like as we talked about in the opening here, I think most of the audience are, entrepreneurs that are pretty early in the journey. And I think a lot of the focus of this conversation really needs to be, they're just trying to get a product out the door. They're trying to get early adopter customers. They're trying to raise visibility in a pretty noisy environment where there's a lot of competitors. It's easy to build content, but it's super hard to differentiate. And so I'm kind of curious about, if you use that as a lens, talk to me a little bit about the way you think about those problems and helping early stage entrepreneurs.
The biggest leverage in marketing is not the optimization of Google Ads campaigns or SEO or something, but it starts with the offer and with a match to the right target audiences. So I've seen clients, startups who were not focusing on a specific target audience.
Okay.
And they had, for example, 5 different target audiences. But if you, and some of them were very, disadvantages kind of. So like students, for example, he was sending out cold email outreach. And of course, students have more time. So you get proportionally more of the clients who are not going to pay you for the premium premium plan. So, and then we made a very focused, we chose one target audience out of those 5, and which means that you suddenly have 5 times more resources to focus on only one target audience that has the biggest potential, and you are not losing your time with unnecessary requests from target audience that are not going to pay you. And you are also learning how to adjust your product based on the right target audience, and not because students maybe have different requirements than your core target audience, and you can build a huge product, and you are busy working, creating features, and you are not generating revenue.
That's good. I think there's a lot to unpack in there, at least from my perspective. I think the first thing I heard from you was kind of targeting. And maybe we say this a little bit different, but I think it's the same, is you really need to understand the persona you're selling to,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And so I think we do this from a product development standpoint and discovery. So you're basically trying to find a beachhead or a segment that basically is really understanding this. And you have to go quite deep, right? Like, what is their education? What is their ages? What are they comfortable with? Where are the channels that they hang out in? And I think sometimes we just assume, they're on Facebook, they're on Instagram, they're on LinkedIn. But we look for entrepreneurs. And what's interesting is we have two demographics. We have people that are professionals that basically want to be an entrepreneur. So they're already a civil engineer, or they're already in orthodontics, and you find those on LinkedIn pretty well. But if you find people that just want to be entrepreneurs that have an idea, they're generally not for us on LinkedIn. You got to find other channels. And so Reddit's been really good. We use something called F6S, which is a website that has a lot of entrepreneur components of this as well. And so finding the channels, but it starts with good understanding of that demographic. And so, when you're working with early stage entrepreneurs, how do you get them to really refine that persona so that you can do good targeting?
First of all, as entrepreneur, it's normal to have a lot of uncertainty, and we have to live with that. That's many people or entrepreneurs in the early stages, they are afraid of specializing, on focusing on a few things, and because they think they don't know it. But when you, even with a lot of uncertainty, if you focus on a few things, you have better chances of succeeding. Even and of course sometimes it's not the right, you adjust, but yeah, at one you can only focus on one thing at a time. And second of all, there is a lot of people already have a lot of knowledge sometimes about the target audiences, and they are not even aware of that. So you just think about it logically. For example, students, we all know that they are they are kind of broke.
They're poor.
Yes, 20 euros or 10 euros or dollars per month for them, it's like for a professional 50 euros or something. So yeah. There is some you can already remove some of the target audiences by just logic. And then also sometimes you have a background in a certain industry and you already know a certain target audience well. So you don't need to reinvent the wheel. So if you have spent the last 10 years with a certain type of industry, you can already offer them the product. It's not only about the shiny things and saying, I want to earn, there is a huge trend in this industry, I want to jump into it. But it's also about your experience and resources. And research. You can, like you mentioned, Reddit, for example, offers a lot. You can see what they are asking. And reviews on software platforms like Capterra or AppSumo, for example. Mm-hmm. And of course, by talking to those people, you go to social events, you learn so much about them, or you contact people on LinkedIn and try to connect with them and have a call with them. That's very effective way to learn about them.
I guess what I hear in what you're talking about is it's a series of experiments, right? And so I think that early stage, what you're trying to do is you're coming up with a persona or a beachhead or a profile. You're trying some messaging. If it doesn't work, you're refining it. And I think what you're trying to do is basically go from these are the best guess I have, hypothesis, to 89% of the time this actually works. And now you can start to build a marketing plan around that you can actually invest because you have something that's working, and you can, and you've tried a bunch of channels, you have an idea of what your cost per click is going to be, and then you're starting to get some feedback on it. And so I think one of the things that I guess I want to reemphasize is I think so many times entrepreneurs want to like just find the ultimate strategy. And really what it is a whole bunch of experiments. It's a whole bunch of trials where you're doing minimal risk and you're getting some feedback back from it. And it's like, it takes a while to go do that effectively. And I don't know if that's your experience, but like certainly with the entrepreneurs that we work with, they start out with a hypothesis and they may end up in a different spot, but it's like, it's a series of experiments that all you're trying to do is learn. There is no failure to it if you actually take good, feedback from it.
Absolutely, you're so right. Also, two small ideas about that topic is ChatGPT can be pretty helpful to if you explain it, and it can give you some inspiration about your target audience. It can also create some buyer persona that you can evaluate, and also think about as an entrepreneur whom you want to spend time with in conversations and working with, and whom you don't want to spend time with. So, and that can already remove 70% maybe of possible options of target audiences.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting in that one is, depending on your sales cycle, there's influencers and then there's buyers, right? And so, a lot of my world has been B2B, and so most of the people that we work with are kind of B2B. And so you may reach somebody who has this problem, but are they the people that actually sign the check? And I think there's a huge difference in how you're marketing to them and where you're spending time. And so I think a lot of times people can get an influencer engaged and excited, but they can't build the business proposal to somebody else to actually sign the check and do it. And so I think that's another big nuance to this is your persona, are they the buyer or not?
That's a good point. In my recent client, he wanted to target American educational institution, research institutions. But he has a small window to start earning money. And with that, it's easier to target a person who can just decide here and now to pay $5 per month.
Yep.
Then an institution, of course, you get maybe 100 clients at once, 100 plans at once, but how long does it take you to get the contract? Maybe the professor who would use, or the students they would really like to use the software, the solution, but it's so difficult, and maybe it will take half a year or 1 year. So be careful with bigger corporations if you are targeting them, because you can run out of money quite easily, and maybe you are almost close to closing the deal, and the department manager is changing, and you have to start from zero.
Well, I sold into higher ed at Concur, and what was interesting is procurement can be a huge issue, right? Like just, there's somebody that basically negotiates these things for a living. And so you can get through the business owner, you can get through the financial owner, and then you get to procurement, and they just want to grind you. And then, a lot of times they don't want a small company, right? Because they're worried that you're not going to be around in a while. So I do think that's a really smart thing. And so, in a lot of cases, then maybe do you have to go to, what we have as junior colleges? Maybe you're going to either private institutions that can make independent decisions, but you're starting at the bottom of that stack and then working your way up as you have more validity.
That's another thing, that entrepreneurs have visions to conquer the world, to do strategic planning. For example, he said also, we can target students. And then it's like with Microsoft products, everyone is using the software, so the institution will be become a standard solution. But the first year or the first 2 years, you have to focus on generating revenue as easily as possible. And you are not in the position like Microsoft to build something in the long run where you can where you will profit from that in 5 or 10 years, because most startups don't even survive the first couple of years. So, but as soon as you figured out how to earn a little bit of money that can sustain you $1,000, $2,000 per month, suddenly you don't have this pressure of time restraint to earn. So like if you don't earn enough money until the next 6 months, then you will run out of business and you have to close the business. So you have to, in each level of startup, you have to focus on different things, and you can have a long-term strategy in the back of your mind, but in the short term you have to focus on the low-hanging fruits.
Yeah. What do they say? The best way to eat an elephant, one bite at a time. And so you got to start somewhere. I guess one of the topics I wanted to kind of go back to a little bit is, even with all of this work that we're talking about doing, where it's like you focus on a profile and then you start small, it's hard because there's other competitors out there. And one of the things that we really stress is kind of building that kind of thought leadership. Like, where did this idea come from? And being authentic with some of the early messaging. So we have a guy that went through our program that was in wildland fire. So they're putting out, forest fires. And they ran a company, and they were saying, finding people, finding equipment, understanding, negotiating contracts, all of that is super hard. And the problem is when you have a fire, it's got to be immediate, right? And so if you don't pick up the phone and answer this call quickly and you have people on standby, you're going to miss this opportunity. So what they did was they ended up building a platform that managed a lot of that. So you could find the people, you could get the certifications, you could understand where there's a water tanker and an ambulance and a wood chipper, and make sure that it got to the right spots. My point of this is there's an authentic story that started with real world experience. And to me, when they talk to other forest fighters or people that are in that industry, that comes across. And so I think so many times we genericize some of the kind of core message that we have early, and you lose that authentic, why did I start this and why do I see the world differently?
I lost the last part. There was some internet connection issue, but
okay. So the last thing I was just going to say was I think that a lot of times we lose the ability to convey that kind of emotion and that kind of context that these guys know what's going on in that industry. And when you're talking to other people, that stuff relates, even if you're an early stage startup.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest issues of startups is that the trust. No one knows them. Everyone, and they are small. So there is this where you have to cross the bridge, kind of, that, or to prove yourself that you are a reliable partner. You are going to be there for the next foreseeable future, and you are not just here for a few months to try it out and then leave. And as you said, so you can use the storytelling in your marketing. I'm a huge fan of that. That's where you are not talking about the features, because no one is buying because of features. Everyone is trying to find a solution for their problem. And it becomes also easier to convince people the bigger pain point you are solving. So that's also another thing. But with the trust thing, important is to, first of all, to give your company a soul, a face, and stories about how you found it, what is your motivation, why you are doing that, can be pretty good. And also like to showcase that you are serious about that. But also, so client stories, success stories, all of those things, they can they can help you to become what the opposite of what is not working is an anonymous company who you don't know who is behind that. So we want to make business interact with real people. And it's not about, so if your posts are all just bland ChatGPT generated text, just giving some information about how to do certain things, it will be very difficult to stand out. It will be it's so boring, no one will pay attention to you. So it's better to focus on less content, but more like with the soul. So what I do with AI, I really like AI, but if I give it a lot of freedom to generate posts, it will generate empty posts. It sounds nice, but it doesn't feel like a human. So I recorded. I like when I'm relaxed, I record with voice, and then I let AI optimize the content. But I always tell ChatGPT not to change the meaning too much, so that it still be my kind of voice and my unique experiences. And then people are also surprised. Like many people think they don't have a story, but when they think about the why and about their experiences, maybe they had the same problem for some time and now they found a solution, and that can make a big difference in marketing and to stand out.
Yeah, I'd even maybe challenge some of the stuff on the AI thing. I think that what's interesting for me is the more I interact with it, the more context I give it, the better the content that comes back, right? Yeah. And so if you're basically just saying, I need a LinkedIn post for this, yeah, you're going to get crap. And it's going to be empty. But if you basically said, here's a doc that I have that has all my persona information in it. If I basically say, let's create a conversation about here are the 3 competitors that I have. Here's how I'm thinking about differentiating. Now write a post on this persona and my differentiation. Like the content's pretty good. Or it's better. Like it's not like perfect, but it's never meant to be perfect. But if you can get you 90% of the way there and you can tweak it, then that's pretty good. And I think that's where I think some people don't make the investment to spend the time to basically build out some of these elements of it. And so, you have a lot of, and if you have a writing style, if you have a style or that you admire, right? That's another piece to this puzzle where you could say, hey, somebody else does this really well, and I've copied their writing style, just do it in their style. All of these things are just pieces to the puzzle that give AI a better shot at doing what you want it to do. But if you basically genericize it and it's a one-shotter, like you're not going to get what you like. And I don't know if that's your experience too, Will, or no?
Absolutely. You explained or you mentioned a very important thing, in my opinion. One of the most important things in successful businesses are the processes. So if you had a freelancer who would write this content, it would work similarly. The more context you give to this person, at least in the beginning, the better the results. So that's why, yes, you are absolutely right. It makes sense to prepare, to really understand your position, your goals, and your target audience. And then it will, if you provide that to the AI or your freelancers, team members, then overall results will be much better.
Yeah. So let's go back to your storytelling, because I think this one's kind of lost a little bit. I think some people gloss over it a little bit. And so, we always start with what's even the elevator pitch, right? About like your background or how you got into this, and making that super tight and concise, like really concise for people to understand. Sometimes that's difficult, right? An entrepreneur's got like all of these ideas, and getting them down into something that's actually bite-sized, that's saying in 30, 45 seconds, I can understand what you're doing and why you're in front of me. So that's one. The other one is we talked a little bit about the framework of storytelling, which is really, I think I borrow it from Stories That Stick. And basically it's an idea of, at the beginning, you're talking about how, what's the process look like today, what happened through the transformation, and then what happened at the end. So super simple, kind of cookie cutter. But I'm curious, that's great from very elemental storytelling. And it's a good structure for them to kind of think about. And it shows transformation, right? It shows like I started here, I ended here, and there was some change in the middle. Do you have any more recommendations? Are there books? Are there structures? Are there ways that you think about storytelling that is not super complicated, but can be applied to entrepreneurs that are going through this for the very first time?
I realized that many founders, they struggle to prioritize and to remove everything else, because it feels like maybe I will remove something important. For example, if you are expressing on your communication the problem and then the solution and then reward. So people say, entrepreneurs might think, okay, but maybe I want to offer solution to different problems. And you can test that. You can test that with meta ads, for example. You can generate different banners with different problems and solutions, and see which of those have a better CTR and maybe signups. But in general, I realized there are such a huge ocean of alternatives. And if someone is offering you exactly the problem that you had on your mind, it suddenly makes a kind of an aha moment, because you realize as a client or prospect, this person, this company really understands me, and I'm well. It's the right company to solve that problem because they are already understand me, and that's exactly how you stand out to more well-funded companies, because it's not about working harder. Those companies like HubSpot, for example, they have hundreds employees probably, and even if you work 50% more than 8 hours, it's nothing.
You're not going to catch them. Yep.
But if you are the ideal solution for a small piece of pie, kind of small group of target audience, then suddenly you are much more attractive than the generalist.
Yep. I think that's totally true. So let's kind of pivot a little bit to talking about like email marketing as a whole. I think a lot of people get intimidated by, I'm just going to basically, send a bunch of emails. I got a list. These are my, profile that makes sense. I've done some enrichment to get the list kind of, full. Maybe I've got some personalization type stuff in there. Now they sit down and say, okay, I'm just going to bang out a 3 or 4 email campaign. And, like the ones that we see early on are just, they're trash, right? Like they're going to go directly, a lot of this is the call to action isn't strong. The goal isn't strong. And so maybe I'll talk a little bit about what we end up doing, and then maybe you can critique it and try to make it better, or you can tell me what you guys do. But like the first email is really about like, do you understand the problem the same way we do, right? And so what you're trying to do is take out of that universe and just get down to the people that are most interesting to you. And so I think a lot of people get nervous. I want a big sales funnel. And I think what we're always saying is, no, you want a narrow sales funnel. You only want deals and prospects that are interesting, that like are good fits for you. Get them out if they're not. So the first one is really, something that's like, do you see the problem the way we do? And maybe there's like a Gagne report. Maybe there's a call to action that's a more independent third-party assessment of the market and how the problems are there. It's not about your product. It's not about your solution. It's about the problem that you have. And all you're trying to do is get people to relate to that. I think the second one that we always talk about, if you can do it, is if you've got a case study, show a customer that's very, very similar to them and basically say, you're not the first person to go through this. And in some cases, we make it, when you're early on, it's almost fictitious, right? Because you don't have a first customer. But if you could basically make that a person that actually, this is kind of how it would solve the solution. And then maybe there's more information, the CTA on that maybe is a download of the true use case of it, or how they evaluated it, or how they built a business case internally. And then the third one is really, how do I get engaged with you, right? Like, what's the buying process? Maybe it's about features. Maybe it's about change management. Maybe it's about engaging with us. And so it's super simple. And really what we're trying to do is, we use HubSpot a lot, but we're just trying to basically use a pretty simple scoring system that says, did they raise their hand? Did they open it? Did they do the call to action? Did they read your blog? And if they did, those are good candidates for you to follow up with. So let me just stop there and see if that stuff resonates.
Are we talking about generating leads and then sending emails? Or are we talking about cold email outreach?
This is more cold outreach, right? Where you've gotten your messaging kind of down, you've got your profile, and now you're doing some cold outreach.
I would zoom out a little bit. And so first step, so I want to mention 2 things. The first step, founders oftentimes are thinking about scaling up. But if you don't have the basis, it's difficult to scale up. So if you don't have references, if you don't have users, you can look at your network on LinkedIn, for example, and try. You don't even need to earn money for that. You just try to get some clients, some user feedback, and that and experience what works, what doesn't, and that will give you some tools to use email marketing, cold email outreach more effectively. With email outreach, the problem is you oftentimes have a very small percentage of replies, of clicks, click-through rate. So it's not so easy to do A/B testing because you need a lot of information. And I would divide, or I would group different marketing channels into different level of building trust with your target audience.
Okay.
So oftentimes as a startup or business in general, you need to build trust. You need to build kind of relationship. And with cold email outreach, it has the pretty low effectiveness in building relationship with the first, at least, email. For example, a bigger building relationship tool are videos. So on YouTube, or podcasts, being like a guest on other podcasts, because you have so much more time to establish your authority. Yeah. So you have to be realistic with what you can achieve with cold email outreach. Many people think they can ask to have a call with someone. I received that over and over again. And for me, it's like, okay, I don't know you. I don't know what's your unique selling proposition. Why should I spend my valuable time? So you have to offer. It can work if the person is really have a big pain and you are solving that makes it easier. And if you offer something, if you require some small action from this person as the next step, so you just need to bring him to the next step, and it's maybe not to sign up for your solution already because the gap is too big. Maybe it's even you can link to a video with more details, or you can offer, like you said, some kind of report or lead magnet so that you get some replies. And yeah, you need to send several emails, and also it's the more relevant people you are contacting. For example, you can contact a bunch of people that maybe not so relevant, and you will have from 10,000 people, well, maybe few people will interact with that. Or you can invest much more time in each lead. For example, if they are created a job post and that gives you some information, you can contact them, and it's the right timing, it's the right place, kind of. So it's much easier. And sometimes if you want to target very specific target audience, maybe cold email outreach is not the best way in the beginning. Maybe Google Ads, where people are searching for certain things. Or for example, on Google Ads, it can be expensive if you are competing on search. But if you can also target people who used to search in the last 7 days, 30 days for certain keywords. And then you can advertise on YouTube. And that makes it much more affordable, and you have much more space to establish a relationship because they can see your face, and you have a bit more time to explain.
Yeah, so I guess one of the things I took away from that just group is, like, you got to create value, right? You talk about it in trust, you talk about it in all these different ways, but honestly, it's just about value, right? And so I think about Challenger sale, the book Challenger sale, which is like saying, even if I go through the sales process with you, even if I listen to read your email marketing, am I getting something of value out of this, regardless if I buy from you? And I think that is a good minimum bar, where it's like, if you're actually doing that and you're creating value above and beyond purchasing my product, I think it creates a different mindset in the way that you build copy. And so I do think that's hard, but I do think that if you want to stand out, you can't spam them with the features. You can't tell them to go buy your product. What you need to do is give them value that basically leads to trust, which then leads to an engaging in a buying process.
For me, that's how I would build any business. I would always focus on value, how much value I can give. And in my opinion, that's how you build a sustainable business that have the potential to grow, and people will be happy to pay for that usually, if you avoid, of course, people who can't afford that. And so I would also include that in how you build your product, how you advertise it, how you position that. And I think, as you said, it becomes much more intuitive. The marketing industry likes complicated words and likes to make it sound like it's some kind of magic. But in reality, if you understand that there are humans on the other side and you are just trying to help them, then it becomes much more intuitive, everything.
Yeah, you bring up a good point that I think is sometimes lost, and this goes back to some of our ChatGPT or AI conversations. Building a vernacular like dictionary for those industries is pretty good too, right? And so in the past I sold into finance, and then if finance has its own language, and if you don't speak that language in your copy and your sales, you don't resonate with them. And so again, what's interesting is if you're early stage, and maybe you have the domain expertise, maybe you don't, but what words do they use? And then do you really do that? Because then all of a sudden you're automatically getting to a segment that's using the types of words and vernacular that you want, and then they understand that you probably have an inference of understanding their industry. And so again, I think it's like an overlooked small thing, but it doesn't take much. But again, it gets back to your comment of just building generic content. It needs to be specific. And so I don't know if you guys do anything with that, but I do think that that's an easy one where, and so we have one that does things with churches, some software with churches. And what's interesting is even the difference between a Catholic church and a Baptist church and a Methodist church, they talk differently. And so if you don't figure out what their vernacular is and talk in their language for the value proposition, they kind of tune out, or it doesn't resonate with them in the same way. So these nuances are super important.
Absolutely. I have a client who offers a software solution for engineers and electricians, and I don't know the lingo. Yeah. So it's important to understand, here is the marketing techniques, and here is the expert who can adjust it with the lingo, with the experts. So if for founders who maybe don't have this insider knowledge about this expertise, about this field, they can always get a consultancy, for example, 1 hour consultancy with the specialist. Yeah. For example, I had another client in the past for electric products, and I hired an engineer for just a couple hours, and we were going through the solar panels that we are selling for the client, just to understand how does it work. Yeah. And within 1 hour, 2 hours, you can become from a blunt marketer or startup to insider kind of. Yeah. Of course, it takes some time. It's a process, but and there are also the other extreme. When you work in one industry, like me, for example, if I work in marketing and if I talk with marketing people, I can say all those CTR, all those terms but then if I talk with normal startup founders who are not working with marketing all day long, I try to avoid those lingo, those terms, because it makes it more complicated.
Sure. Yeah, no question. Well, it's good. Let's like kind of assume that like a startup has kind of some of the basics kind of going. We talked a lot about in the last 40 minutes or so, like all the basics that we're talking about. And so, you know, in preparation for this, you were kind of talking about like marketing leaks, like how do you evaluate your marketing program? Where do you find ways to kind of tune it? Where do you look for efficiencies in both cost and time and click-through rates, just effectiveness? And maybe take the next 5 or 6 minutes to kind of talk through some of those opportunities that we see once you have the foundations and you have something that's kind of instrumentated where you kind of know what's working and what isn't.
Oftentimes I find that the basics are missing out. So now we finally covered that. So one important thing is to understand that you can build trust with ads. So I've seen many founders that they try many different marketing channels, and they think that social media and SEO seems like an affordable marketing channel. And then they spend a lot of time and effort, and they achieve very little visibility. But you could do the same. You can achieve much more with less effort and less, like with the small investments, if you used Google ads or Meta ads, or even maybe LinkedIn ads, but they are a bit more expensive. But here you have to do also kind of like retargeting. So you have to, like, startups have to understand that you don't sell on the first interaction with a prospect. So you try, and you don't just you don't sell if you just try to promote your product in each ad or post. So you need a combination out of where you are giving value. You're just building brand, and you can do that with ads. People think maybe, I can't afford that. But in reality, for example, on YouTube, we are paying $2 per view of a video. In my opinion, and it's so much more difficult to achieve it organically. And if so the goal is to show the same ads, not the same ads, to the same people, 7 or 10 or even more different videos or content, so that they the first few times they see your post, they don't even remember your brand, but after a while they start recognizing it. But when they see it, so you build this brand in a very small niche with a very specific target audience. That's what many people miss. Also, another thing is with all those ads, you really need to have proper conversion tracking. The algorithm is taking over the control in Google Ads and Meta Ads. Especially with Google Ads, it's a bit more complicated. So you can hire on Upwork someone who can either do an audit and see if everything is set up correctly, or hire someone who will just set it up for you, because for them it's like 5 hours, and for you it's like several weekends maybe.
Exactly.
And it's still not working. I had a client, for example, who set Google Ads in the way that it was tracking the conversion double. Oh. So she was making losses and she didn't realize that. But which is even worse if you set up conversion tracking not in the right way. Then the algorithm is optimizing your ads on wrong goals, and you will not. And then what happens oftentimes, they say, Google Ads didn't work for me. For like millions of people, companies, it worked, but like it's not for me. I will try something else, and they move to the next thing. But oftentimes it's just not how you used it in the right way.
Right way. So maybe talk to me a little bit more about that. So like these are, are these like 3 to 5 second kind of videos that are embedded in some larger content, right? Is that how it goes?
I prefer even longer videos. So
okay.
you can create 30 seconds, 1 minute even, and you can see whoever watches those videos. There are many like possibilities to target. You can target like the first time you can target people who search certain keywords in Google, for example.
Okay.
In the past 30 days. And then you can retarget those who watched your videos. You can retarget with other videos of your content.
Okay.
So you will see that the click-through rate will increase and the watch time will increase. You can even create a series of videos. So today it will be shown to 100 people, and those who didn't skip, they will be shown the next video. And in the end, you will have real like fans kind of, because they watched 10 videos of you.
Right.
And the conversion rate should be much better then.
That's good. Have you had much experience with Reddit? I think like we've seen that's a pretty cheap channel. And if there's like a subreddit that really aligns well with your business, and again, you can do it 2 ways, right? You could basically just post as a user and saying, I'm adding value, so I'm raising the visibility of what I'm doing. You're sending them to, CTAs or something that's of value to them, and then doing ads alongside of it, where they see not only you, but they see the content that you're providing as well as ads. So the firefighting one that we were talking about, there's a whole bunch of subreddits for just firefighters. And so I think they basically got 5,000-6,000 people. And, I bet you it was less than 50, 60 cents per user from an acquisition standpoint. So very, very good. But again, there was a subreddit for it. These people are looking for jobs. They were providing a job board where you could get, certified and then hooked up with somebody. So the value proposition there was very, very strong. But I'm curious if you see opportunities there. I don't think their ad platform is nearly as sophisticated as Google or any of these other ones or Meta. But on the flip side, it's super cheap today. And if you've got good alignment with some of the subreddits, I think it's a very good channel to take a look at.
Personally, I didn't do much with Reddit, but I had a whole podcast interview about Reddit with an entrepreneur, with a SaaS founder who had a lot of success on that without ads. And yes, I think it can have a lot of potential for your business, especially if if your target audience is on that platform. So there are a specific type of people on this platform. And if they are active on that, then it can work. What I see over and over again, and I experienced myself, that you hear from some influencers from YouTube channels that this is amazing channel, you should do that. And then there is this shiny object. You say, this is so, there will be so much easier to acquire a client, and then you jump from one thing to another. Right. So that's very important. You choose one channel, or maybe 2 channels. One is the main channel, and second is like an experimental. An experimental. And you stick to that for like 3, 6, 9 months. Yep. Because oftentimes in those channels, you need several months to figure it out, to start getting authority on those platforms. And then if you switch too early, you will not reach that point where you can get the fruits from that. And I think it's a good idea to go like with Reddit, a platform where bigger companies probably are not as active. You don't have so much competition with well-funded companies. So yeah.
Well, it's good. My last question for you, Will, is should be a fun one. In doing some of the research, you do some improv. And so you were talking about like improv, and you were talking about, you got this corporate component of it. As I was talking to you in the opening before we got on, I have a friend in Germany who basically does the exact same thing, where he actually runs workshops for people in the corporate world, and part of his day job is running an improv workshop. And so it's just kind of interesting how those fit. So maybe talk to me a little bit about your experience with improv and how you think it fits with kind of the business world.
Improv blew my mind a little bit. In the beginning, I struggled a lot to go there and to put myself out there.
It's intimidating.
Yes, it was horrifying. But then when I started doing it, I realized, actually, I am more capable than I thought about public speaking and performing and coming up with ideas. And at one point, I was standing on the stage, and I realized, wait a moment, I don't feel any anxiousness. I even don't feel like I'm on the stage. It feels so comfortable. And you get so much confidence that you will always find what to say. And there are so much advice on improv that you can transfer one-to-one to normal communication, business communication, personal communication. For example, in improv, it's not about trying to be funny. It's about listening. And then if someone gives you something specific, something extraordinary, then you jump on it, and you don't, in the beginning, you pass by it, and you are in your head and thinking something clever, but you get so many gifts. And in real life, it's the same. Also with sales calls, the person says something very unique, and you are so much in your head, and you are thinking, okay, I have to convince him. But he gave you already a gift, and you can jump on it. You can either make a better relationship with this person, or you can give some specific arguments that will work with what he said.
Well, that's a great way to end it. I think that using those types of things, I mean, what I just heard from you was listening, right? Like a lot of this is about listening and then building on top of it. Not having your agenda, but basically listening to understand them. And so maybe that's a great way to end this. I really appreciate you taking the time. This has been a really fascinating conversation, and I think you've given us a lot to kind of think through. So thank you for taking the time.
It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. Thank you very much, Todd.
If you enjoyed the podcast today, please just take a moment to rate it or comment on it for us. This feedback really helps us, and it helps us get the word out to helping other entrepreneurs and founders. Thank you.